Basically, the hukou is the household registration system in China, traditionally connected to the danwei of where you work, at the work unit. And so traditionally your hukou and your residence permit is related to where you live or where you work or where you are born. And so when migrant workers are migrating into the city, they don't necessarily have a Beijing hukou. And a Beijing hukou will give them access to privileges to educate their children and reduced healthcare and other privileges associated with being a Beijing resident. But migrant workers are sort of outside of that system.
Okay. So you have the workers themselves, the parents, I guess, and then these children who can't get a legal free education with this card. So you had this influx, massive influx, especially we know prior to the Olympic Games and all through the 2000s, massive construction projects all over China, all over Beijing, sort of done by these pool of very, very cheap labor from the countryside. And so then you sprang up organizations like yours, migrant schools, other kinds of organizations to deal with these migrant workers and their children. Because why exactly? They were becoming a social problem? They were becoming, I mean, what exactly was the problem they're trying to redress here?
I mean, I think the issue is that this is, I mean, the Chinese migration situation or the Chinese migration phenomenon is one of the biggest migration movements in the history of the world. My understanding is that the sheer numbers of people that are migrating from the rural areas to the cities. And yet these are people who are, often like excluded from social welfare benefits, from adequate contract or labor law outside of labor law, or they're often not necessarily paid on time, for example, and working conditions and with working hours that are not, are not within sort of international law, worker rights, or even within Chinese law. And I think for me, what is also, so there's the sort of the disadvantages, if you like, and the challenges associated with that. But on the other hand, the migrant worker population is also a very dynamic population. They are the ones who are traveling. They are moving between the rural and urban areas at a time of great change in China. And they're a critical part of actually building the new China. So they're a very important population to China's growth and development. And also at a very interesting cross-section. They have access to worlds that potentially, the city people don't know very much about and the rural areas don't know about. So for me, there's a kind of creativity, a dynamism, an entrepreneurial spirit that I find very exciting to work with. So for me, it's less about necessarily addressing the problems so much as it's also about harnessing the potentials.
Interesting.